This is Radically Alive Women's Edgecast.
Hello and welcome to Radically Alive Women. Yaki Wo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your name in my mouth sounds already foreign, but like a beautiful piece of music.
Oh, yeah. It
And
does have a long story of its own. It's not a very common name, even where I'm from in Hong Kong. But I'll save that for another day.
okay. Yes, because I reached out to you to speak something that sparked my interest when someone mentioned you and your previous work. And then we had a conversation, and what sparked my interest was that you've been in a large funding world and involved in climate change, and you shifted somehow. You went your own path and you created something of your own in collaboration. I think it was based on your forest therapy education, something that happened around the COVID time. And you are a mother, and I would like to know, will you say something about like what you would like to know people about you right now as they listen?
Yeah. I now always introduce myself first and foremost as a mother of two. Yeah, being a mother really changed my life. And that's my first job, if you like. I'm also a forest therapy guide and a regenerative practitioner, and ever evolving one. So now my main work is introducing people to regenerative development and practice. Yeah. Yeah, I wear many hats, so it's very hard often to capture all of it very succinctly.
Would you say something about regenerative practice? What does that even mean? Or let's start with regeneration, because
Yeah, so regeneration, if you think of all of the practices in our world in a spectrum, on the one hand, you have the typical, more extractive-based practices. So the old thinking where we see natural resources, people as just resources to be used and consumed for production, and then you have output. And then you come to somewhere in the middle, there is the notion of sustainability. But sustainability is really just doing no harm. It's not actually doing more good. It's just reducing the harm to zero, perhaps, at best. So restorative is going beyond sustainability, and regenerative is even going beyond restorative to healing, to adding positive changes to the world, to co-evolving with the world as an interconnected ecosystem. Yeah, I like one of the, I guess, definition, if you will, that my mentor used was regenerative practice is cultivating essence to essence relationship between whole living beings. And whole living beings can be us as human beings. It can be anything that is living, right? It can be a tree, it can be an animal, it can be the whole community, it can be the whole city or the entire planet. So it's cultivating that essence to essence relationship among all of us. Yeah.
I notice my body relaxes, something in me relaxes hearing that, touches a deep part in me. And how do you foster that with the work that you do nowadays?
One of the key programs that I've been working on is called the Future Positive Leadership Program, and we are focused on introducing the regenerative practice concept to architects and planners and people who work with spaces. But also along the way, many non-architects and planners have come along, like community facilitators or artists or teachers who are interested in this work. And we really, other than just giving them the theoretical thinking behind it, like the principles and all of the philosophies behind it, we really facilitate this embodied experience of what it means to be in relationship with each other, in reciprocal relationship with each other, and also with nature, with the land, and with the community, and also with themselves. So it's that reconnection with the self and with others and with nature. And following that, we provide an ongoing community support, because oftentimes, even when people can, have a feeling or like a glimpse of the essence in them during the workshop, the real challenge is moving back in reality, in the real world post-workshop. So we provide that sort of ongoing community support for them whenever they feel they need the energy to keep going again, that motivation, or just know that they are not alone and that we're all here for each other, holding space for each other. Mm. Mm.
What does that look like specifically? A workshop, and like a future positive workshop. What do you do there?
Yeah, we do a number of things. So we introduce the theory. So there is the sort of the theoretical part, which is done beforehand online. And then we have a lot of facilitated invitations where we say we align the head, heart, and hands. So we do a lot of heart-to-heart deep listening practices. We sit in circles. And we also do a lot of sort of playful invitations, games. And then in between all of those, we have lots of meditative moments, movement practices. Every morning we have either you can choose a tea ceremony, a Zen tea ceremony, or you can go and do an embodied movement practice in the park, out, in nature. We also had a whole day. So the last workshop in Malaysia, in Kuching, we had a whole day just spent out in nature, with the morning in a cave, in the fairy cave, and in the afternoon we connected with a local indigenous tribe, the Bidayu village. So we interacted with the local people as well, because that's part of cultivating that reciprocal relationship. So we cooked, we foraged with the villagers, we cooked with them, and then we enjoyed the meal with them. We were invited to their homes where they shared stories of their culture. And we also did something similar, but in the urban context on the first day. So we visited 4 different places. It was a tattoo parlor, a record store, a local coffee shop, and the old courthouse. So again, just very different stories from very different perspectives, but really connecting with the local people, to their essence, because it's through these people that we understand the essence of the place, and through their stories. So it is an essential part of regenerative practice is identifying and feeling for the essence of the place. Yeah. And then a lot of sensory experience, and food was a big part of our last workshop, because Kuching is the UNESCO city of culinary excellence or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the title, but they have a lot on offer. And we had a lot of amazing food. We also had sort of a curated plating the wild experience, where the curator Marion, she's just a really passionate advocate for decolonizing food, because a lot of the local food ingredients like cassava have long been seen as lower class ingredients, like only poor people eat cassava. And now they have taken a lot of these local ingredients and elevating them through food activism and just, refining those ingredients. So we had an amazing time, like just nourishing our bodies too, through beautiful food. Yeah. Mm. Music was a big part. Music and dance, celebration. So I remember the first night when we were in Malaysia, it was a full moon night. So we decided to have a human library on the rooftop. We did not actually see the full moon because it was a very cloudy night, but we had an amazing time just sharing stories and singing. Yeah, and just enjoying each other's company.
Would you say that by connecting consciously with the essence of other beings, be it human, be it plants, be it other life, that these people, like the people that come there, that they remember their own essence more also?
Definitely. I think there were lots of built-in moments for reflections as well, for personal reflections. So usually after a personal reflection invitation, we do some sort of small group or just pair people up into for deeper sharing. And I think one of the most powerful invitation was a songline invitation. So we were given, I don't know if you've done this before, but it's like you're given a piece of string that represent at one point is your birth, and the other point is assuming you're gonna live until 100 years old. So that's your point of death. And along this line were your top 3 most joyful moments, your top 3 saddest, I guess, moments of grief, and then your 3 moments of transformation. And just, it was so illuminating when you plot all of them along the line. And you notice how some of the moments of grief are very close to moments of transformation, for example. They are often very close to each other. And when people pair up for sharing, it's also quite interesting, I guess, to note there are a lot of similarities in some ways between some of the participants' stories. Yeah. And it was through that communication, through that very in-depth sharing, where you know that you're free to feel vulnerable, you're free to articulate anything without the fear for judgment, that your true self can really come out. Yeah. And just sometimes like allowing that moment of pause, right? If you set up the circle or like that sharing space, right, and we're holding it for each other, then we know that we have the time and space to really let the words flow or let the ideas emerge without rushing or without pre-planning in our heads what I'm going to say next. What am I going to say in order to sound smart or, impress others? It's just taking that pressure off. Yeah, that was really essential.
Sort of wondering where to go, because there's like I'd love to hear more about the work and how it affects people's lives. But at the same time, I want to know where you come from. I want to know more, or I'm listening to know a bit more about your path, because it sounds like it's been really non-linear also. Would you share and also because you've been like you're originally from Hong Kong, and you've been active in the Asian parts, which are quite foreign to me, and I think to a large part of the people listening to Radically Live Women so far. Could you share a bit about your path of
Sure.
where you've been professionally?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I mean, I spent like a year in Canada and Singapore when I was really little, but for the most part, I was in Hong Kong up until I finished my first degree in uni. And I like to think I was always I've always found myself a little bit out of place from the general Hong Kong vibe, because, Hong Kong people are known to be very competitive and very, I guess, like money driven. It's used to be, or maybe it still is, the financial capital of the world. And I remember many of my friends back in middle school would be learning how to invest in the stock market. when they're teenagers, and they would like just skip lessons and do their own thing and try to make money already. And I was never like interested in that. I've always had like a sort of sense of justice and wanted to do good, whatever that means, right? And so when I was in uni, I chose to study journalism. I thought I would give a voice to those who didn't have a voice. But I ended up not being a journalist. I ended up becoming a human rights campaigner. That's my first job. And I did that for about a year, and then I got a scholarship and I went to the UK, and I thought, okay, now this new thing is climate change, and this is where like human rights intersect with environmental degradation, and I need to save the planet and the people at the same time. So I had this sort of heroic mindset, I guess, like I wanted to save the world. And I went to the UK, did my master's in environment and development, and I started working at this philanthropic foundation that was giving a lot of funding to NGOs working on climate change issues. Thought that was my dream job. And I just remember how hard those years were, like just trying to show that I'm smart enough, show that I can do this, and applying that mindset, that sort of old world mindset, needing to show up and be aggressive and being ultra analytical, because we are doing all this research and policy documents that are feeding into the EU, feeding into the top government in China, and we're changing the world at the highest level. So we need to be like this super rational thinker. And it was totally not me. So I was really struggling. I was really like pushing this huge rock uphill. And I did that. I was totally burnt out. Yeah. And then I left the UK, but I was still in this world, working as a consultant for a climate change an organization, which is still the organization I'm working for now. They are very much focused on decarbonizing the built environment. So they're focused on buildings, focusing on educating architects and urban planners. And I was in the beginning still applying that sort of old school thinking, right? Like I was still doing a lot of analytical work. And we were, trying to get all of these top government officials, but also top companies, architectural firms, for example, all the biggest firms in the US, internationally, not just in the US, but also in China, to sign up to a commitment to get to zero carbon, by a certain year. And we did all of that. It was beautiful. We went to the climate change conference, COP, in Paris, and we announced that, and great round of applause. And we started doing the next step, which was to help the architects get to zero, right? Because they have committed to get to zero, but they did not know how. So we thought we'll just get all these experts over to China and India and Korea, and we'll train all the architects in this. And we'll train as many of them as possible because time is running out and, the world is on fire. So it was very much, I think, that very common activist mindset, like we have to do the right thing as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. So we were doing lots of training for like hundreds of people at a time, sometimes over 1,000, all in a hotel room, presentation after presentation, like 20 minutes presentation, and then maybe 10 minutes Q&A. And we just did that like for the whole day, for maybe 3 days in a row, and covered lots of topics, right? But at one point, I remember seeing someone in that room, like just scrolling on their phone, some were like falling asleep. Others were like just chit-chatting with somebody next to them. They were just really like not that into the content. And I was a bit disappointed and discouraged. But you do see like those people, they come alive as soon as there's a tea break, and they get to talk to people and they get to connect with each other. And I think that's when I started to think maybe there's another way of doing this more effectively than just feeding them information. But that took a while, like that shift. I think that real shift came when it was actually a personal event. And that was when my mother started falling ill in 2016. She had leukemia, and she was in treatment for 2 years before passing away in 2018. But during those 2 years, I really started to, I went on like a personal exploration, and it's, I guess, like a spiritual journey myself. And I started reading a lot, especially Thich Nhat Hanh on like Zen Buddhism. I started to connect the dots like through theory U. I was reading about Capra's the systems view of life, and just noticing how like all the work that I've been doing is actually connected to, like, it sounds totally irrelevant, but my mother's illness and life and death, they are all interconnected. But I still didn't really have a way of shifting the work that I was doing. And in 2018, when my mother passed away, very soon after she passed away, I trained to become a forest therapy guide. And I started having, I guess, this sort of skill set to facilitate nature connection, and also started to practice holding space for other people and hosting circles, and also deepening my own practice of connecting with nature and more contemplative practices too. So that was really like a moment where I felt this is something that I definitely need to incorporate into my work in some form. And I was starting to actively look for a way to do that. And then, of course, shortly after that was COVID, and I became a mother at around the same time. My firstborn was, she was born on in September 2019. And then the following year was like the lockdown and everything started, right? And all of a sudden, all our work, we were doing a lot of in-person events. All of a sudden, I could no longer travel. All of the events were not allowed to go ahead, and we had to think of other ways of engaging people. And people were asking for different things too during lockdown. People were asking different questions. People were turning inwards. So it felt like the right moment when we start to connect the dots. And I started talking to my colleagues and my funder about this new idea of incorporating, maybe we should just educate architects and planners in a different way. Maybe instead of having hundreds of people in a room, we just have like 20 or 30 people and really dive deep, aligning that, inner sustainability with outer sustainability. And yeah, I was surprised maybe that they were very receptive of the idea. It's as if everything was aligned all at once. My colleagues in the US, they have for many years worked on like this analytical research and papers, right? And they were like, we're actually thinking of the same thing. We're looking into the intersectionality between climate change and indigenous wisdom and cultural preservation. And I was like, how on earth, like this is all happening at the same time, like without me pushing or, worrying that they would think that I was a bit odd or, coming up with all these wild ideas. And yeah, we just started, I just started thinking up this program, and I met my now work partner, Wild Bound. They are an amazing organization based in Beijing. And they also have a lot of experience in connecting like that inner and outer sustainability, doing climate change work with art, with a lot of contemplative practices too. So the founder of the organization, she's been going to the Plum Village regularly for retreats and doing a lot of practices. So yeah, we together came up, I guess, with this Future Positive program where we try to incorporate everything and really moving beyond that old school thinking to this newer mode, which we think and we hope the world will see is a more regenerative way forward. Honoring, we're not saying we're discarding, all the rational thinking, like there's a place for it, but we're reconnecting like with our intuitive body, not just the mind and the body, the left and right hemispheres. We are just connecting all of the previously separate pieces into a whole. Yeah, it's a long rambling, a long journey, but here we are. Yeah,
thank you. It sounds very organic in a way. Organic, but then when things happen, to be a yes to the change, or to the changes on the outside, but also on the inside. Sounds like your journey has been that also. Yeah.
And it's really quite, what I found is when I was working in the old way, like even though I was doing good, like in the philanthropic world, like I said, I was like pushing this big rock up a hill. It was very hard. It was very tiring. It was not easy. Whereas now I find this flow, when I'm in a flow, I'm like at ease. I know when to take a break, and I need to take a break, and I can say that I need to take a break. We're all within our team, we're honoring each other's space and needs, and we're supporting each other in this, in this journey together. And also when you trust that there is a time for everything, you trust for things to emerge rather than imposing. I feel like in the past, I've always maybe come up with an idea and try to impose it or advocate it, whereas now it's more about listening and noticing where the patterns are emerging, listening to the community, like maybe from our participants, what do they need, and allowing things to emerge. And that is where the ease comes from. Like it's not from me trying to push, and that activist and advocate mode of like trying to push things to people who may not want it or may not be ready for it. It's a very different way of working.
And that reminds me also of regeneration in the way of working, because that pushing is, as you said, you burned out. And I know that also, that when I keep pushing, I'm bound to burn out. So letting the regeneration also happen at the workplace, or in the work, whatever that is, whether it's classical work, traditional work, or whether it's even your calling, your life's work. The regeneration there, multifaceted way to regenerate.
Yes.
How did you notice that you were burned out? Like, how did that express in you? Because I think a lot of people might burn out and they don't even notice.
Yeah. I was having regular migraines. I remember there was like this one moment when I suddenly realized that I've been eating my lunch in front of the computer almost every day when I was working in London. And I remember one day I was thinking, I didn't remember what I had for lunch, and I did not remember how it tasted. Like I had no memory. I was just shuffling things down my throat. And also just that, unwillingness to just I guess that constant low energy, but also the feeling that I have to pick myself up and I have to keep going. So there was like this real dragging feeling. Yeah, it wasn't easy. Like it was, it's like I had to do this because this is the right thing to do, but I had to convince myself. Like I was self-hypnotizing every day in order to keep me going. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I can relate. I can so relate to that. So thanks for putting words to that.
Yeah.
And I guess like my sort of last question is, how has your being a woman influenced your path?
Mm. Yeah, I think it has shown up in different ways, because especially being Asian, like brought up in in a very Asian context where women's not really, like, I remember my dad when I was little, he said that he actually told me, you don't have to be too successful, you just need to marry someone who can provide for you, someone like wealthy. Like it's good enough to be, you know, like a kindy teacher or a primary school teacher, like just a decent job, and you can relax once you have your own children, that kind of thing. Yeah, but I thought there was a little, well, I guess partly it's a different generation. Like in our generation, we do feel we do have like the privilege of equal opportunities, at least in schools. And a lot of my peers are very strong women, strong girls and strong women, they turn out to be. But that also maybe gives me extra pressure to really show up and really try harder than the boys. Yeah, so I was very competitive in school when I was younger.
So
And
did your dad's comment sort of make you want even more to be successful? It's like,
I think
I'll
so.
show you. Something
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And I remember when I got my first scholarship, he didn't believe in me. He thought, yeah, he thought that maybe like my parents were separated. He thought that maybe my mom paid for it. Yeah. And when I got my scholarship to study my master's in the UK, he somehow, because I had been with my then boyfriend, now husband, for a long time already, he thought that my then boyfriend's parents paid for my tuition. And I was like, how hard is it for you to believe that your daughter is good enough to get a scholarship? Yeah, but I worked extra hard. Like I felt I had to prove myself. And I've noticed that a lot too in the workplace, where there are a lot of strong women who had to work extra hard and be ultra aggressive to show that they are capable, which was very unfortunate in a way. Yeah.
well, somehow I get the impression already from the very start of our conversation that there is something real feminine coming through you. And somehow you made space for that, or somehow you learned to honor that. And I'm guessing that that was also part of your path.
Yes, I
So-
think especially in the past couple of years, like since doing the forest therapy work and now with the Future Positive team, we are mostly women. We have two very supportive male colleagues. Yeah, but we are a very mutually supportive, mutually empowering team of women. So we always honor each other's needs and space and different strengths, and we really make the effort of understanding each other's uniqueness, unique essence and potential. Yeah, I think it's hard for me to say how I would cope like in the, I guess, the outside world, because I feel like I'm in a little very nourishing bubble. But yeah, I'm glad that I've been able to create this community of women for myself, well, for each other, but also for myself.
Thank you. Is there one practice or something that you would want to give to women or men listening right now of how they could start? Maybe take one step to connecting with their own essence.
Yeah, I always like to invite people to do a sit spot, to find a sit spot outdoors. It doesn't have to be like in a native bush, somewhere pristine, but it can just be like in your backyard, or even a tree in the parking lot, like anywhere outside. And if for some people I know, like for elderly, I have guided, they can't even go outside. I would just say, like, sit by the window where you can look at the sky. Just do that for 15 minutes. Do nothing and just sit there for 15 minutes every day. And if you like writing, you can see if anything emerges after 15 minutes and write anything down or draw pictures. Yeah.
But for 15 minutes, don't do that. Just sit.
Yeah. Do nothing. Absolutely nothing.
That's challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Thank you, Yaki. I've enjoyed this
Thank
conversation.
you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Imagine that you could become so radically alive that you would create not only the life that you love, but also the culture that comes through you that your being is designed to create. This is what this Edgecast is about. This is what this Edgecast aims to inspire in you as you listen to this right now. And this could be a daunting thing. And daunting is not a problem. Daunting simply means it's new, it's scary, and why not do it anyway? This is where evolution lies. Evolution is there where the fear is. So we're inviting you to join us on this journey and make it your own. You can do this by, keep diving into these free episodes, the episodes that we're gifting from a place of abundance and necessity. And you can also become a member, benefiting from some special content that we upload in the membership area. But really, the membership portal is for you to take more responsibility so that we can keep creating this content. And if you were willing to step even closer into the circle, you could join our in-person live offerings online. There are many transformative workshops and trainings that are on offer from various radically alive women across the globe. And you can find all of our offerings on our website, radicallyalivewomen.com. This Edgecast is brought to you by Radically Alive Women, a team of women consisting currently of Julia Neumann, Millicent Hoey, Annika Korsten, and Hannah Abuzara. See you soon.